I never imagined that a single text message could shatter everything I had built. My heart, my plans, my future. Yet, there I was, staring at my phone in disbelief, as if the screen itself had betrayed me. I had been meticulously planning my wedding for over a year, envisioning a life of trust, shared dreams, and unconditional love. Instead, in one horrifying moment, my fiancée's secret conversation with her ex unraveled every promise we had made. I felt like I was falling into an abyss of betrayal, and in that moment, every vow of forgiveness and every hope for a happy future evaporated from my mind. I had always been a believer in second chances, in the idea that love could overcome any obstacle, but nothing prepared me for the realization that the person I was about to marry had been dancing with deception behind my back. The texts were clear, a playful tone that hinted at rekindled feelings, clandestine emojis, and plans for secret meetups that were scheduled just a month before our wedding. How could I have been so blind? The shock was not just in the discovery, but in the betrayal itself. I had trusted her with everything, my vulnerabilities, my dreams, and my plans for a shared future. The fact that she chose to speak with someone from her past, someone who no longer belonged in her present, cut deeper than any knife. I spent hours pacing my apartment, the cold light of dawn replacing the darkness in my eyes. Every memory of us, the long walks, the whispered promises, the stolen glances, turned bitter as I replayed each moment in my head. It wasn't just the act of texting, it was the deception that lurked behind every carefully chosen word. I couldn't help but feel foolish for ever believing in the facade of loyalty she had constructed. Anger surged through me, a visceral mix of heartbreak and fury that left no room for forgiveness. I decided then and there that I wouldn't give her another chance. I wouldn't subject myself to further deceit or endure the humiliation of being second best. The decision came swiftly. I ghosted her. I deleted every contact, every social media connection that might remind me of what we once had. I canceled the wedding, the celebration that was supposed to mark a new chapter in our lives, and I packed my bags for a trip that I had always planned to take solo. A journey of rediscovery that now felt like the only antidote to my shattered world. In that moment, I wasn't running away. I was reclaiming my identity. I was telling the universe that I was not defined by someone else's betrayal, but by my own strength and resilience. The first few days on the trip were a blur of unfamiliar landscapes and introspective solitude. I rented a small room in a bustling coastal town, far from the memories that haunted me back home. Each morning, I would wake up to the sound of crashing waves and remind myself that nature's relentless power could heal even the deepest wounds. I spent hours walking along the shore, collecting pieces of driftwood that I later turned into small art pieces, a subtle reminder that from broken fragments, beauty could still emerge. In the midst of nature's raw splendor, I found solace in solitude and a quiet satisfaction in reclaiming my own narrative. Yet, as the days passed, a small part of me couldn't escape the constant reminder of what I had lost. There were moments when the silence was so profound it seemed to echo with the absence of her laughter and the ghost of her smile. But every time that nostalgia crept in, I reminded myself why I had made this choice. I wasn't giving in to sadness or regret. I was taking control of my destiny. My journey wasn't about erasing the past. It was about forging a new path, one where I wouldn't allow someone else's treachery to dictate my worth or my future. In the evenings, I would find a quiet corner of a local cafe, sip on black coffee, and scribble down my thoughts in a battered journal. My writing became both a confession and a catharsis, a raw outpouring of the pain, anger, and eventual acceptance that had taken root in my soul. I detailed every moment of betrayal, every pang of regret, and every spark of determination that grew as I embraced the freedom of solitude. Through the words, I felt an odd sense of empowerment. I was documenting not just a tale of heartbreak, but a declaration of independence, a promise to myself that I would never be made to feel less than I was. One evening, as I was leaving the cafe, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a rain-smeared window. I hardly recognized the man staring back at me, a face etched with lines of pain and eyes that had seen too much deceit. Yet, amidst that raw vulnerability, I also saw the beginnings of strength. I realized that what I had lost wasn't just a partner, it was a false self that had been defined by someone else's approval. Now, in its place, I was constructing something genuine, something that belonged solely to me. Every step I took, every decision I made, was a brick in the foundation of my new identity. Revenge, however, wasn't about becoming as bitter as the one who had wronged me. It was about rising above the situation, reclaiming my dignity, and proving that I was capable of living a life of fulfillment without the toxicity that had once suffocated me. I resolved to immerse myself fully in the journey ahead, exploring new horizons, meeting new people, and embracing experiences that would help me rediscover the parts of me that had been hidden under layers of trust and deception. I enrolled in a local photography course, learning to capture the beauty of fleeting moments with a click of my camera. The art of photography became my therapy, a means to frame the world in a way that resonated with my newfound perspective. Then, about a week into my trip, as I was wandering through an art gallery on a whim, I saw her. Standing in the corner, half hidden behind a display of modern sculptures, was the woman who had once promised me the world. Her eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, the chaos of my emotions threatened to break through my carefully constructed walls. I froze, unable to reconcile the image of the person I once loved with the stranger who now stood before me. There was no trace of remorse in her gaze, only a desperate longing that seemed to plead for redemption. I couldn't let her see the vulnerability that had once been my undoing. The ghost of our past lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken words and shattered promises. Before I could decide on my next move, she approached me with trembling steps, her voice barely above a whisper as she uttered words of apology. "I'm so sorry," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I made a mistake, and I want to fix it. Please, give me another chance." Her words, meant to thaw the ice of my heart, only fueled the flames of my indignation. I had spent days, no, weeks, rebuilding my life. And here she was, expecting that a single apology could mend the fractures of our past. I looked at her steadily, my mind racing through the labyrinth of our shared history, every betrayal as clear as the photographs I had taken during my solitary journey. "You think a simple sorry will undo everything?" I replied, my voice steady and resolute. "I trusted you, and you shattered that trust with your lies. I've built a new life out here, one that isn't defined by your mistakes." My words were not laced with the bitterness of revenge in its rawest form, but they carried the weight of a man who had risen above the betrayal. I had learned that forgiveness wasn't a currency I could exchange for peace. Instead, I had chosen to invest my energy in carving out a life that was entirely my own. For a long, excruciating minute, we stood there, the betrayed and the betrayer, locked in a silent duel of glances. I saw in her eyes a mixture of regret and desperation, the kind that only comes from knowing you've lost something irretrievable. But I wasn't interested in reclaiming the past. I was determined to guard the future I had so painstakingly rebuilt. "I don't owe you anything," I said, my tone final, echoing the resolve that had become the anthem of my journey. "There's no room for another chance here." I walked away without another word, leaving her standing amidst the art and echoes of our former life. That moment marked the final severance of a bond that had long since been poisoned by deceit. The satisfaction I felt wasn't born from a desire to hurt her, it was the pure relief of liberating myself from the chains of betrayal. I had taken a painful leap into the unknown, and in doing so, I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my new projects with a ferocity that surprised even me. I organized a local photography exhibit, showcasing the raw, unfiltered beauty of life as seen through my lens. The event was a resounding success, drawing attention from the local art community and reaffirming my belief in my own capabilities. Each compliment, every encouraging word from strangers, was a reminder that I was more than the sum of someone else's mistakes. I was a man reborn, one who had turned betrayal into a catalyst for self-discovery and growth. I remember sitting alone in my favorite seaside cafe one afternoon, a gentle smile playing on my lips as I reflected on how far I had come. The sea stretched endlessly before me, its rhythm echoing the steady beat of my own heart. I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the solitude that had forced me to confront my inner demons, to embrace the person I was meant to be without the constant need for validation from someone who had proven unworthy. I had learned that true strength wasn't about forgiving the unforgivable. It was about letting go of the desire for a reconciliation that would only perpetuate my own misery. As the trip drew to a close, I found myself at a crossroads. On one hand, there was the familiar pull of home, the world I had left behind. On the other, the promise of a future that was entirely my own, untarnished by the betrayal that had once defined me. I chose to return home, not to rejoin a broken relationship, but to face the remnants of a past that I had finally outgrown. I knew that life would continue to present challenges, but I was ready. I had faced betrayal, and in its wake, I had forged a path of resilience and self-empowerment that no one could ever take away. Returning home was both cathartic and bittersweet. I arranged to meet a few old friends, people who had seen me through the highs and lows, and as we talked, I realized that their support had never wavered. They didn't judge me for the choices I had made. Instead, they celebrated the newfound independence that now defined me. In their eyes, I was not the victim of a crumbling romance. I was a survivor, a man who had taken control of his destiny in the face of unspeakable betrayal. I even reconnected with a few estranged family members, slowly mending bridges that had been singed by the fallout of my previous engagement. Each reunion, each shared laugh was a small victory, a reminder that life was meant to be lived fully, without the shadow of past deceptions. I returned to my old job with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to excel and prove that my worth wasn't defined by the love I had lost. Every day became a deliberate act of self-respect, a defiant stand against the idea that betrayal could ever hold power over me again. The memory of her, my fiancée, the woman who had once been my beacon of hope, remained a quiet echo in the background of my new life. I didn't harbor anger for the sake of anger. I simply knew that forgiveness was not a path I was willing to tread. My revenge was not an act of malice, but a refusal to be shackled by someone else's deceit. I had taken the hardest step of all, relinquishing the hope of reconciliation, and in doing so, I had discovered that my own happiness was far more valuable than clinging to a relationship built on lies. Now, whenever I catch a glimpse of my reflection in a window or see the ocean stretching into the horizon, I am reminded of that painful yet transformative chapter of my life. I learned that sometimes the greatest revenge is not to inflict pain, but to live so fully and fiercely that the person who once hurt you becomes a distant memory, a footnote in a story that now belongs entirely to you. I learned that every betrayal, no matter how deep, could be the catalyst for a journey towards self-discovery and empowerment. I share my story not to evoke pity or to reopen old wounds, but as a reminder that we all have the power to reclaim our lives when everything seems lost. The path I chose was not easy. It was filled with moments of intense loneliness, fierce determination, and ultimately, profound growth. The scars remain, a testament to the battles I fought within myself, but they are no longer symbols of defeat. Instead, they are the badges of honor earned by a man who refused to let betrayal define his future. Looking back, I can say with absolute certainty that ghosting her, canceling the wedding, and taking that trip solo were the best decisions I ever made. I found strength in solitude, discovered a passion for art and photography, and, most importantly, I learned that my self-worth was never dependent on someone else's actions. I built a new life from the fragments of a broken past, piece by piece, until the person staring back at me in every reflection was someone I could be proud of, a man who had not only survived betrayal, but had thrived in spite of it. So if you're out there struggling with a betrayal that feels too immense to overcome, know this: the path forward may be steep and lonely, but it is yours to command. Trust in your own strength, let your pain be the fuel for your journey, and never, ever compromise your self-worth for the sake of a love that isn't real. I chose to walk away from a future built on false promises and instead embraced a life defined by truth and resilience. And in that decision, I found a kind of freedom I never thought possible. A freedom that now carries me forward into every new day with unyielding determination. In the end, revenge was never about causing her pain. It was about reclaiming my life, refusing to be tethered by the chains of deception, and proving to myself that I was capable of rising above the hurt. Every sunrise, every captured moment behind the lens, was a reminder that I was my own person. A person strong enough to rebuild from the ashes of betrayal and to create a future that was entirely my own. I may have lost the love I thought I had, but I gained something far more valuable: the unwavering knowledge that I am enough and that my journey is defined by my choices, not by the actions of those who betray me. And so, as I continue to walk this path, I hold no illusions about the pain of the past. I recognize it, honor it, and then set it aside as a stepping stone toward a brighter, freer tomorrow. The echoes of betrayal still whisper in the recesses of my memory, but they no longer hold the power to disrupt the life I have forged. My revenge was not in seeking to harm her, but in refusing to allow her mistakes to determine my destiny. I live each day with a quiet, steadfast pride, knowing that I have turned the darkest moment of my life into a beacon of strength and self-realization. This is my story, a story of betrayal, loss, and ultimately, redemption. It is a story of a man who was once deceived, but who refused to be defined by that deception. I learned that sometimes the most profound act of revenge is simply to live well, to love oneself fiercely, and to rise above the ruins of a broken dream. And in doing so, I found that the greatest gift I could give myself was the freedom to be unapologetically, irrevocably me.